In the pursuit of divine truth, a seeker eventually reaches a point where accumulating more data and theological proofs creates distance from the intended goal. Standard academic study relies on the human brain to construct mental frameworks. We use logical proofs and syllogisms to deduce truth from a distance. Islamic mysticism, or tasawwuf, operates under a different rule. It rejects the intellect as the final arbiter of what is true. To the mystic, relying solely on the brain creates a barrier. It traps the seeker in theories about God rather than the reality of God. Understanding the Sufi framework requires identifying an epistemological instrument other than the human brain. The Arabic language anticipates this divide. The concept of knowledge bifurcates into two distinct paths. The first branch is ilm, representing intellectual knowledge acquired through learning and logical deduction. The second branch is ma'rifa, from the root arafa. This represents experiential gnosis and direct recognition. The 9th century mystic Zunnun al-Mishri formalized this division. He established the framework that governs Sufi epistemology. Achieving ma'rifa involves shifting entirely to a different mechanism of perception, rather than gathering more data for analysis. Zunnun al-Mishri categorized human knowledge of the divine into a specific taxonomy. As this concentric model illustrates, comprehension exists in 3 tiers. The outermost ring represents ma'rifa orang awam, the knowledge of the layperson. A person reaches this baseline tier through the basic declaration of faith. It requires no specialized philosophical inquiry. The middle ring represents ma'rifa mutakalimin, the domain of the theologians and philosophers. This tier operates on rigorous logical deduction, rational argumentation, and textual analysis. Modern scholars, including Harun Nasutian, have identified a specific limitation to this middle tier. Nasutian argues that this philosophical tier is still strictly ilm because it remains entirely reliant on akal, the human intellect. Intellectual rigor alone keeps the seeker in the middle ring, unable to reach the core truth of the mystic. The glowing center ring belongs to the awliya, the mystics and saints. Entry into this tier requires the human intellect to be set aside. In its place, the seeker uses musiyada, direct spiritual witnessing. This is not logical deduction. Musiyada functions closer to physical sight than to thinking. The Indonesian academic text seen here details the 3 specific types of ma'rifa. This highest level is achieved through the sanubari, the deepest heart. As highlighted in the text, this process bypasses the mind entirely. This inner heart opens a channel to knowledge that is inaccessible to standard theologians. In the Sufi paradigm, the reality of God is an undeniable presence witnessed directly by the spiritual heart. If the intellect is set aside, we must understand the specific spiritual apparatus doing the witnessing. Al-Ghazali defined this apparatus as the qalbu. This is not the physical organ pumping blood, but a sensitive receptor for divine truth. Al-Ghazali compared the qalbu to a mirror. Looking at this diagram, we see it in its optimal state, reflecting the pure light of the divine. According to his writings, every human being possesses this hardware from birth. If this hardware is universal, the rarity of ma'rifa requires an explanation. The explanation lies in hawa nafsu, material desires and the ego. Hawa nafsu acts as dirt. Over a lifetime, it accumulates as a film on the surface of the spiritual mirror, blocking the light. The Sufi tradition attributes human ignorance of the divine to this specific hardware malfunction, the accumulation of worldly attachments on the qalbu. To repair the hardware, Sufis employ tazkiyah an-nafs, the active purification of the soul. This is mujahada, an arduous spiritual struggle against your own ego. The primary tool for this purification is zikr, the rhythmic, sustained remembrance and chanting of God's names, used to scrub the mirror clean. In this academic analysis, Al-Ghazali's view of the qalbu is examined, detailing the necessity of clearing the heart of everything except God. A fully polished mirror regains its original ability to reflect the divine light. Knowledge of God is earned not by reading more books, but by aggressively cleaning the internal instrument of perception. The moment the polished mirror finally catches the light represents the final stage of ma'rifa experience. Zunnun al-Misri expressed this realization as Araftu Rabbi bi Rabbi, I knew my Lord by my Lord. This realization carries specific theological weight. Ma'rifah is a divine illumination, not a human achievement. Human effort only prepares the receptor. God casts the light. This stands in contrast to the philosopher, who believes human logic can force God into comprehension. At this level of Islamic mysticism, true knowledge is a gift, dependent on divine will rather than intellectual effort. The trajectory of Nun al-Misri's taxonomy moves us from the layman to the philosopher to the mystic. To the Sufi, the outer rings of logic, theology, and the material world are merely hijab, veils. The ultimate goal of tasawwuf is the stripping away of these veils. Once these veils are entirely removed, the debate ends, replaced by certainty. The peak of Islamic epistemology focuses on preparing the heart to reflect the light that was always there.